Today we're counting down the 10 best public domain movies. Welcome to the Carnival of Souls. I'm your host, Clockwork Ghosty. Let's get started. Number 10, Messiah of Evil. My thoughts on this movie are that this is a very strange movie with a wonderfully creepy atmosphere, though the effects wouldn't hold up to today's standards. It was disturbing back in its time, and they were pretty well executed. I enjoy this movie and the plot, which is very similar to The Shadow Over Innsmouth, though with a female protagonist looking for her father and teaming up with other outsiders to try and locate him. And instead of fish creatures, we just straight up have zombies. Most people I've watched this movie with kind of just look at me like I'm a bit weird, but I really think it's a good watch, especially being public domain and easy to find. Some facts about this movie are that it's a 1973 American horror film co-written, co-produced, and co-directed by Willard Huyck and Gloria Katz, the husband and wife team behind the film version of Howard the Duck, as well as the screenplays for American Graffiti and Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. There are several alternate titles of the film, including Dead People, Return of the Living Dead, Revenge of the Screaming Dead, and The Second Coming. The film was involved in a 1970s dispute over its name. When a Chicago distributor released it under the title Return of the Living Dead, the title was chosen to make it sound as part of the Living Dead franchise, although it was not. The Laurel Group, founded in 1976 by George A. Romero and Richard P. Robutston, took legal action against this use of the title. Eventually, the Motion Picture Association of America decided that Romero did not hold exclusive rights to the terms Living Dead, but ruled against the use of the misleading title. Number 9, Haxon. I think this is an interesting depiction of how people once saw witches and how those people accused were treated. For the time, the visuals of this movie were spectacular and still hold up really well today, in my opinion. Though, if you watch the original 1 hour and 44 minutes version, the quality of the video itself is a little off, or that could be the YouTube issue. Haxon's English title, The Witches, or Witchcraft Through the Ages, is a 1922 Swedish-Danish silent film written and directed by Benjamin Christensen, based partly on Christensen's study of the Malus Maleficarium, a 15th century German guide for inquisitors. Haxon is a study of how superstition and the misunderstanding of diseases and mental illness could lead to the hysteria of the witch hunts. The film was made as a documentary but contains dramatized sequences that are comparable to horror films. With Christensen's meticulous recreation of medieval scenes and the lengthy production period, the film was the most expensive Scandinavian silent film ever made, costing nearly 2 million Swedish kroner. Although it won acclaim in Denmark and Sweden, the film was banned in the United States and heavily censored in other countries for what were considered, at the time, graphic depictions of torture, nudity, and sexual perversion. The film was re-released in 1941 in Denmark with an extended introduction by Christensen. The intertitles were also changed in this version. In 1968, an abbreviated version of the film, 77 minutes as opposed to the original's 104 minutes, was released and entitled Witchcraft Through the Ages. This version features an eclectic jazz score by Dal Humer and dramatic narration by William S. Burroughs. On October 16, 2001, Haxon was released on DVD by Criterion Collection. This release features a restored print of the original version of the film, as well as the 1968 Witchcraft Through the Ages version. Also featured are extensive production notes, a re-recorded musical score, commentary by Danish film scholar Kasper Tabjerg, a gallery featuring the images used in the film's first section, and the introduction Christensen recorded for the 1941 re-release. Personally, I think the music of the original is more fitting and the storytelling a bit better. Both versions are worth a look though, so check them out for yourself here on YouTube. Oh, fun fact, the director plays the role of Satan. Number 8, White Zombie. This one is a classic and a favorite among many. I enjoy it too. It's a simple story of love conquering evil, and the ending, though predictable, is still nice. White Zombie is a 1932 American pre-code horror film directed and independently produced by Victor and Edward Halperin. The screenplay by Garnet Weston, based on The Magic Island by William Seabrook, tells the story of a young woman who is turned into a zombie at the hands of an evil voodoo master. The voodoo master does this for a man who is in love with the young woman and wants to steal her away from her new husband. Bela Lugosi stars as the antagonist, Murder Legendre, with Madge Bellamy appearing as his victim. Other cast members included Robert W. Fraser, John Heron, and Joseph Cathorn. White Zombie was filmed in 11 days in March 1932 and was shot at the Universal Studios lot in Bronson Canyon on such a small budget that it had to be filmed at night. Other than Bela Lugosi and Joseph Cawthorn, the majority of the cast in White Zombie were actors whose fame had diminished since the silent film era. By the time Lugosi appeared in White Zombie, he was already popular with contemporary audience after his starring role in the hit 1931 film Dracula. The cast and crew's reaction to Lugosi on the set was mixed. Madge Bellamy recalled her collaboration with Lugosi very positively, stating that he was very pleasant and that he used to kiss her hand in the morning as they would come to the set. In contrast, assistant cameraman Enzo Martinelli remarked that Lugosi wasn't really a friendly type on set. White Zombie is considered to be the first feature-length zombie film and has been described as the archetype and model of all zombie movies. Not many early horror films followed White Zombie's Haitian or origin style. Other horror films from the 1930s borrowed themes from White Zombie, such as people returning from the dead and other elements of zombie mythology. These films include The Ghost Breakers, 1940, King of the Zombies, 1941, I Walked with a Zombie, 1943, and The Plague of the Zombies, 1966. These films all contain elements from White Zombie, including the blank-eyed stares, the voodoo drums, and zombies performing manual labor. Scenes from White Zombie have appeared in other films, including Curtis Hanson's The Hand That Rocks the Cradle, Michael Amarty's Nausea, and Tim Burton's Ed Wood. The heavy metal band White Zombie appropriated their name from the film. The group's vocalist, Rob Zombie, said of the film, "It's a great film that not a lot of people know about. It amazes me that a film that is so readily available can be so lost." In 2009, it was announced that Tobe Hooper would direct a remake of White Zombie. Screenwriter Jared Rivet worked on the script in 2007 with Hooper. The project was halted due to rights issues. Rivet explained that White Zombie is clearly public domain, but there were question marks about uncredited source material. In 2013, Walkabout Publishing released Stephanie D. Sullivan's adaptation of White Zombie. No stranger to adaptation, Sullivan told Monster Kid Radio, "Wait a minute, there are movies in the public that I can do an adaptation of the same way I did Iron Man, and White Zombie was right at the top of the list of public domain films that I thought would be a good adaptation." Number 7. Nosferatu. Nosferatu in Symphonia des Grunes, translated as Nosferatu, a Symphony of Horror, or simply Nosferatu. Nosferatu, the Scourge of Humanity, Terror of Dracula, is a 1922 German expressionist horror film directed by F.W. Murnau, starring Max Schreck as the vampire Count Orlok. The film, shot in 1921 and released in 1922, was an unauthorized adaptation of Bram Stoker's Dracula, with names and other details changed because the studio could not obtain the rights to the novel. For instance, Vampire became Nosferatu, and Count Dracula became Count Orlok. Stoker's heirs sued over the adaptation, and a court ruling ordered that all copies of the film be destroyed. However, a few prints of Nosferatu survived, and the film came to be regarded as an influential masterpiece of cinema. The studio behind Nosferatu, Prana Film, was a short-lived silent-era German film studio founded in 1921 by Enrico Diekman and occultist and artist Alban Grau, named for the Buddhist concept of prana. Its intent was to produce occult and supernatural-themed films. Nosferatu was the only production of prana film, as it declared bankruptcy in order to dodge copyright infringement suits from Bram Stoker's widow, Florence Balcom. Grau had the idea to shoot a vampire film. The inspiration arose from Grau's war experience. In the winter of 1916, a Serbian farmer told him that his father was a vampire and one of the undead. The original score was composed by Hans Edermann to be performed by an orchestra during the projection. It is also said that the original music was recorded during a screening of the film. However, most of the score has been lost, and what remains is only a reconstruction of the score as it was played in 1922. This is why so many composers and musicians have written or improvised their own soundtrack to accompany the film. For example, James Bernard, composer of the soundtracks of many Hammer horror films in the late 1950s and 1960s, has written a score for a reissue. My thoughts on this movie are that it's entertaining enough. There are definitely some iconic parts that are creepy looking, so I'd recommend giving it a watch. Number 6. Carnival of Souls. Carnival of Souls is a 1962 American independent horror film starring Candice Hilligoss. The film was produced and directed by Herc Harvey for an estimated $33,000. Carnival of Souls did not gain widespread attention when it was originally released as a double feature with The Devil's Messenger. Today, however, it is regarded as a cult classic. Its plot follows a young woman whose life is disturbed after a car accident, finding herself drawn to the pavilion of an abandoned carnival. Set to an organ score by Gene Moore, Carnival of Souls relies more on atmosphere than on special effects to create a mood of unease and foreboding. The film has a large cult following and is occasionally screened at film and Halloween festivals. It has been cited as an important influence on films of both David Lynch and George A. Romero. This is another favorite of mine. This movie has always seemed to have an uneasy feeling to it, like it has been described, and the ending is epic. An interesting way of showing a person who had one foot in the grave, or maybe you'd say half ghost? It's worth a look if you like ghost movies or something very creepy. This movie is the namesake of my channel. It has a bit of a Twilight Zone feel to it. Number 5. The Phantom of the Opera. The Phantom of the Opera is a 1925 American silent horror film adaptation of Gaston Leroux's 1910 novel Le Fantôme de l'Opéra, directed by Rupert Julian and starring Lon Chaney Sr. in the title role of the deformed phantom who haunts the Paris Opera House, causing murder and mayhem in an attempt to make the woman he loves a star. The film remains most famous for Chaney's ghastly self-devised makeup, which was kept a studio secret until the film's premiere. The film was released on November 25, 1925. The film has been deemed culturally significant by the Library of Congress and selective for preservation in the United States National Film Registry. In the United States, the film is in the public domain due to Universal's failure to renew the copyright in 1953, and may be freely downloaded from the Internet Archive. This movie is nice and spooky with lovely music, and Lon Chaney Sr. does an epic job with his makeup as the Phantom. I love this movie, and for the most part, any version of it. Yes, even that movie most people hate, with Gerard Butler. Christine is not a favorite character of mine because I feel that she is shallow. My opinion, of course, but she was all for the Phantom until she saw his face. Then he became a monster to her. Though the Phantom is a murderer, it would have been all the same to her if he had only been her teacher because of his looks. She had no knowledge of his murderous ways anyway. Number 4. Freaks. Another movie with a shallow woman, but this time purposely so. She marries a man just for his money. When his friends try to accept her into their group, she ends up throwing a tantrum. This is a good movie, yet very controversial. I won't spoil the ending, but just say she gets what she deserves in the end. Freaks is a 1932 American pre-code horror film in which the eponymous characters were played by people who worked as carnival sideshow performers and had real deformities. The original version was considered too shocking to be released and no longer exists. Directed and produced by Todd Browning, whose career never recovered from it, Freaks has been described as standing alone in a subgenre of one. Number 3. The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, German Das Cabinet des Dr. Caligari, is a 1920 German silent horror film, directed by Robert Wayne and written by Hans Janowitz and Karl Mayer. Considered the quintessential work of German expressionist cinema, it tells the story of an insane hypnotist who uses a sleepwalker to commit murders. The film features a dark and twisted visual style with sharp-pointed forms, oblique and curving lines, structures and landscapes that lean and twist in unusual angles, and shadows and streaks of light painted directly onto the sets. While few other purely expressionistic films are made, Caligari still had a major influence over other German directors, and many of the film's expressionist elements, particularly the use of settings, light, and shadow to represent the dark psychology of its character, became prevalent in German cinema. Among the films to use these elements were Marno's Nosferatu 1922 and The Last Laugh 1924, G.W. Papp's Secrets of the Soul 1926, and Lang's Metropolis 1927, and M 1931. The music video for Living Dead Girl by Rob Zombie was made to look similar to this movie. Number 2. House on Haunted Hill. This movie is great. It seems a little more funny than scary, but has a good cast of characters, and the husband, Vincent Price, and the wife have a very deranged relationship. House on Haunted Hill is a 1959 American horror film. It was directed by William Castle, written by Rob White, and stars Vincent Price as eccentric millionaire Frederick Lauren. He and his fourth wife, Annabelle, have invited 5 people to the house for a haunted house party. Whoever stays in the house for the night will earn $10,000. As the night progresses, all the guests are trapped inside the house with ghosts, murderers, and other terrors. The film is perhaps best known for the famous promotional gimmick used in the film's original theatrical release called Emergo. In some theaters that showed the film, William Castle placed an elaborate pulley system in the theater itself, which allowed a plastic skeleton to be flown over the audience at the appropriate time. In August and September 2010, the Film Forum in New York City had a revival of the film, along with several other Castle pictures, that included the original gimmicks. This was the first time since the late 1980s Film Forum had done this. Number 1. The Night of the Living Dead. And our number 1 spot has to go to The Night of the Living Dead, the father of all modern zombie movies. The film and its successors spawned countless imitators in cinema, television, and video gaming, which borrowed elements invented by Romero. Night of the Living Dead ushered in the splatter film subgenre. As one film historian points out, horror prior to Romero's film had mostly involved rubber masks and costumes, cardboard sets, or mysterious figures lurking in the shadows. Night of the Living Dead is a 1968 American independent horror film directed by George A. Romero, starring Dwayne Jones and Judith O'Dea. It was completed on a $114,000 budget and premiered October 1st, 1968. The film became a financial success, grossing $12 million domestically and $18 million internationally. It has been a cult classic ever since. Night of the Living Dead was heavily criticized at its release for its explicit gore. It eventually garnered critical acclaim and has been selected by the Library of Congress for preservation and the National Film Registry as a film deemed culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant. Did we miss your favorite public domain movie? Let us know in the comment section below. Thanks for watching!